Hi, everybody. Jade here. I know we mentioned in a Facebook post last week that we would put a video out, kind of talking about a survey that we're going to launch today. It's a really important survey. This is really important language, and it's a little bit confusing. And so we just wanted to kind of explain a couple of different examples, which is why we wanted to put the video out. So let me first start by saying that the survey is going to be related to layoff language and how seniority impacts the layoff process. I want to be super clear to say that that does not mean we're going into layoffs. We're kind of in a weird spot right now where we're still a month or two out from the legislative process finishing and us knowing what kind of budget SACU is going to have for the future. But we're also in bargaining right now. So we can't wait a month or two to pass a counter proposal. And management has passed language on both the seniority process and the layoff process. So your bargaining team, because this is extremely important language, they want to get your feedback before they even counter propose. We will still have the option to go through a ratification process and all of that later on. But before they even pass a counter across the table, they want to get your feedback, your thoughts, your vote, which is where that survey is going to kind of come into play. So to start, there is already current language in the contract related to the layoff process and how seniority impacts the layoff process. Right now, we're just going to be talking about how seniority impacts the layoff process, not the bidding process. We're going to get to that in a minute. But as it relates to the layoff process only, management has passed some language to change some of the current language. We already have a current process that is, some of it is pretty normal. So just so folks know, kind of a normal process for, especially for government, but for many workplaces is that there is a bumping process for the layoff process. Let me also be clear to say that many things happen before that. And if you pull up the contract language, you can see the many things that happen well before layoff notices are even issued, whether it be staffing in other areas, other positions across the state. All of that is well before the layoff process. But if it does get to the layoff process, we need to make sure that the language is in line with what everybody wants it to state. So I'll start by saying that management has passed language that would have the seniority process be based off of state seniority. That's the big change, is that they want it based off of state seniority and instead of SACU specific seniority. So the first survey question is going to have two options. The first option is if you want it to be based off of state seniority. And let me give an example on that so folks can kind of get an idea of what that could look like in practice. If somebody was at, say, the state hospital for 20 years, and then they came over to SACU a year ago, so they've been with SACU for 1 year, and then somebody else has been at SACU for 20 years. The person that was at the state hospital for 20 years and at SACU for 1 year would override the person that's been at SACU for 20 years because they would have 21 years of state seniority. And the other person would have 20 years of state seniority because they've only been at SACU for that 20 years. That's a big difference than it being SACU specific seniority, which is why we wanted to put the survey out. So if you select the first option on the survey, you want it to be that way. You want it to be based off of state seniority. The other option is going to be SACU specific. So in the same example, somebody was at the state hospital for 20 years, then they've been here for a year, they've been at SACU for a year, and the other person has 20 years. As it relates to the layoff process, the person that was at the state hospital for 20 years and SACU for a year would have a year of seniority, and the person that's been at SACU for 20 years would have 20 years of seniority to be calculated into the process. That can have a really big impact as it relates to what happens if layoffs are issued. You'll see in the contract that there's a whole process for how that works, right? That there's a bumping process first within your house, or if the house closes, it'll be in your region, and then it might go outside your region. And then depending on your classification, if you can bid into a different one, it goes to that. And so if somebody who's been at SACU for a year but has 21 years in this example of state seniority, they're going to potentially override you in your ability to bump into a shift that you might want somewhere else, or your geographic region. And then on the flip side, it could also impact those who have been here for less time, right? Say somebody's been at SACU for 2 years and somebody has been here for 1 year, but the person that was here for a year was at the state hospital for 2 years, they're going to have 3 years of seniority if it's based off of state seniority, and the other person will have two. And that could impact who gets bumped if bumping does happen. And in the end, the last person to kind of get bumped is the one that will end up taking the layoff. And so that can have really big impacts as well, which is why this survey was so important. So option number one on the first question is you want it to be based off of state seniority. Option number two, you want it to be based off of SACU seniority. Then there will also be a comment box. And so we really encourage everyone to go look at that layoff language, Article 47 in the contract. It's online. There's copies all over the place. And if you have any other thoughts, feedback, put it in that survey, in that section. A lot of times people also post on Facebook, that's fine, but please also put it in the survey because your bargaining team is going to pull that survey before the next session to kind of guide them on how to counter propose. So we want to make sure all the feedback is in one place. Then there's going to be a second question. So that's the first question. The second question is also based off of seniority, but it's not the layoff process. It's more for like the bidding process. So we'll take layoff totally out of our minds. Management is proposing kind of two important pieces around this. One, and maybe the biggest, is that they want to take away the current structure, basically, right? So like right now, a position opens and you have, in-house, out-of-house, out-of-island, all of that is in a certain order. They want to take all of that away and it's just open to everybody based on seniority. So that would mean that somebody in Portland could bid into, like, let's say a vacancy opened at Jody and there was somebody at Halsey, they could, it's all going to be based on seniority. They could potentially get the Jody spot over somebody in Jody because it would all be equal, in equal playing field as it relates to only being based on seniority. So there will be a question of, do you want to keep your current structure? Do you want to keep it to where it's, in the house and an island structure? Do you want to keep that? Or do you want to take it away? Do you want to go with no structure with that? It's just kind of a little bit more of a free-for-all based off seniority. So that's the first part to the second question. Then, regardless of which option you chose there, do you want it to be based off of state seniority or SACU seniority? Same exact situation there. There could be really big impacts to that option if we do state seniority. An example there might be, let's say there's somebody at a Salem area home and they have 20 years at the state hospital and they've been at that home for a year. Then there's somebody in a Portland area home and a vacancy opens up there, a position opens up there, and somebody has been in that home for 20 years and they want to bid into that position. If it's based off of state seniority and there's no first dibs for being in house or an island or anything like that, in that scenario, the person that has been at a Salem area home for 1 year but has been within the state for 21 years would override the person that's been at the Portland area home for 20 years. So again, big impact either way you take it. So that question is going to be, do you want to keep the current structure? Or do you want to take away and have it be kind of open for everyone based off seniority? And regardless of whether or not you want to keep the current structure or not, do you want then it to be based off of state seniority or SACU seniority? So two really important questions, different areas of the contract. Both have been proposed by management. Again, doesn't mean that anything's going to land in a certain area. We still have to negotiate this language. Definitely doesn't mean that any kind of layoffs are going to happen. We just need to go through the negotiation process now. We can't wait a couple of months. So please take a look at that survey. Please put your comments in that survey. And if you have any questions, you can reach out to any bargaining team members, or you can reach out to me and we'll try to clear anything up. There will be other surveys. This is not the last of what we're going to be putting out. This is just to guide the bargaining team in their initial counter proposal back. So there'll be other opportunities to kind of give your thoughts and your voice along the way, especially for other articles. Right now, we are just really focused on those two articles. And so we wanted to get everybody's feedback. Thank you, everybody. More to come in the near future. Let us know if you have any questions and we'll get that survey. The survey should be attached to this post in some way or another. All right. Thanks, everyone.